Happy Monday. So, on this beautiful Monday, I wanted to take a message that I got that I used in a compilation, and I didn't really address the message in its entirety. And I had a really interesting experience last week that I think ties into this. All right, so what's the message? All right, so here's the message. It's from Tom, and Tom writes, "Hi, Marie. Love Monday with Marie. I watch it in the evenings of Monday. I'm always trying to catch a cool, quick tip. So I have a situation. How do I handle generational friction without turning it into therapy? I've got managers frustrated with younger team members who don't want to pay their dues. I've got Gen Zs who are ready to quit over the tone of an email. I want to build a culture of respect and resilience, but I don't want to be the referee for every minor misunderstanding. I've got Gen Xers who are frustrated by the whole thing and cannot understand why people are not resilient. And how do we work through this to be more productive has been the big question." Well, Tom, this is a great question. And I think the generational um, issues in the workplace are not new. We've had these as soon as we have multiple generations in a workplace. And we've had multiple generations in the workplace now for about over 30 years, to be honest with you, where we've had at least a minimum of 3 generations in the workplace. We have 4 generations, almost teetering on 5 generations in the workplace currently. And the big question has always been this idea of younger people not paying their dues. And I think that's really ridiculous. We've created a situation where we need to educate our older workers in the workplace on how to mentor and support younger workers, as opposed to this, you gotta pay your dues attitude. It's a bad attitude in the workplace, and it doesn't help support. The other thing is, we also have to set real expectations before kids go into the workplace, because they're going in with this expectation of, I'm going to walk in and I'm going to make 100,000 my first year of working somewhere, or I'm going to get promoted right away. And if those things don't happen, they jump ship. And the reality is that it's not about paying dues in that situation. It's about being realistic that, yes, you may have gone to college, or yes, you may have had some work experience that brought you to this company, but you need to build up that resume. You're still young, you still have a lot of work you need to do to build up that resume. And so that is part of what we need to do, is helping younger generations understand and be realistic with their expectations, but older generation to understand that we don't need to create a divisive work environment. So, Tom, I know you're thinking, okay, that's great, Marie. Thank you for that analysis. How do we fix it? Well, I had an interesting conversation with someone who is of a younger generation than I, and he talked about the experience he had working in sales in a car dealership. And I would like to share his experience because I think it's important and it's a good allegory for all of this. So, in car dealerships, which is not atypical, I think this is true of a multitude of different industries. The idea is that you are competing against other people on your team, other salespeople on your team. And what they found is it not only breeds a really toxic environment, this sense of competing against each other within the sales floor, on the sales floor, I should say, but it also reduces the amount of potential profit that a company can have. And so it's short-sighted. And so one of the things that he did is he convinced his manager to allow him for a month to manage the team that he had differently than what was the traditional management style. And so for a month, it was agreed upon that he could try something different, and if it failed, he lost his job. So he had big stakes involved in this. And so what he did is he took a lot of the principles that we talk about all the time and we teach about in terms of collaboration on a different scale, and also recognizing people's strengths and weaknesses within the organization and leaning into people's strengths, and also supporting the weaknesses by leaning into those who have that particular weakness as a strength, and teaming them together. So the first thing that he did, in all honesty, is that he sat down with them and he tried to figure out what their strengths and weaknesses were, having that conversation. Then he got rid of their individual sales goal and he gave them a group goal. And some of them felt like, oh, this is not going to be good. But he explained to them that the goal was for their division to beat out the other divisions in terms of sales. And so the only way they could do that is if they worked together. So once they agreed to this, because they knew his job was on the line, so he did transparency right then and there. Said, here's the situation. Here's what I want to do. They were willing to do it and try it. Then he, after he'd gone through like all their strengths and weaknesses, he actually paired people with someone that didn't have that particular strength with the goal of, let me teach you. And that's really important. And that really brings me to experiential learning. So as you know, we're a game-based company. And part of that is really, it's about the experiential learning. And by being able to teach someone else what you're good at, you are creating not only an experience for yourself to improve your skills, but you are creating that experience for them, and it becomes a peer situation. And so that's what he did. So if he had someone that was great on the phone and someone who was not so great on the phone, they got paired together. But that person who wasn't great on the phone maybe was really great in person, and that person who was great on the phone maybe was so in person. And you get the point. So they paired up to work together to support each other and help each other. Well, they surpassed their goal, the goal that they originally had, which was the goal that he pulled together from the individual goals. They actually surpassed that goal by 4 times. And when the general manager saw this, he was kind of in shock. But the young man walked him through why it was successful, which again goes back to one of our principles, which is when you have a success or even a failure, you need to sort of walk it through, go down to the root cause of that positive or negative so that it becomes a repeatable process. And that's what he did. And so then obviously didn't lose his job, but they continued to do this, and they built a very strong sales team, and they blew the other divisions of around the country out of the water, because instead of focusing on those individual goals, they focused on the group goals. So it was a case of, it's not about I win. We win if we do this together. And they did win. They got their bonuses. They got trips. They won together. And so I say that to say to you is that is also a way that you can bring generations together. Instead of focusing on your generation is this and your generation is that, let's take the positives of those generations and let's take the weaknesses and let's learn from each other. Let's recognize you can learn from someone young, you can learn from someone old. My mother used to have this saying, is that we can learn from an infant. And that really means that there is no position and there's no age where you can't learn from. And if you walk in with that attitude, you will have less generational friction. So, Tom, I hope that helps. I hope that story gives you some nuggets that you can use and implement on your own team. And also, if you are interested, we've got a great game that we call Difficult Conversations Generational Edition. And so if you're interested in that game, and not just Tom, but anybody, reach out and I'm happy to get you the game so that you can play it with your team. All right, I'll see you next Monday.